It's Josh and Frankie. What a couple of dumb shits.
Hello, primates! You found Primus Tracks. Congratulations! There are other places to find us too, but this is the fun place. Instagram, Threads, primustrackspod@gmail.com is the email address. There is a Facebook page. It is maintained by the man in the 39th floor of Primus Tracks Towers, but today he's moving slow, low to the ground. It's Frankie Bearstein.
Hi, Josh.
Frankie, today we're talking about the third track of the Oysterhead record. It's called Mr. Oysterhead. We need help analyzing Mr. Oysterhead.
We do.
When all else has been done and said, along comes Kello Gonzalez. It almost works. Kello.
He's an inspiration.
He is an inspiration to us all. And I'm going to use that one. He's an inspiration to us all. It's Kello Gonzalez. Welcome back to Primus Tracks.
Thank you for the brevity of introduction.
Oh, you are so welcome. It's great to have you back to talk about the thematic track to the Oysterhead record. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this record as a whole. I think you're going to model some bass parts with that beautiful envelope filter. But I think we should start by noting that you have a record coming out very soon.
I do have like 3 records coming out.
Three records.
Today, which I don't know when this comes out, I guess. The single will be out, which is the first single out of my first solo album. Took a while for me to kind of get my mind around actually doing this. I have a vault of songs that never found a home.
Okay.
Right, on either projects or bands or anything I've done. And it was until this summer that I decided that I was going to do something with them. So I have the album at this time. 9 out of 10 songs are done, mixed and mastered and everything.
Wow.
And if all goes well, the album should be out probably late January.
Late January. And that is your solo record under the name Kello Gonzalez?
That is correct.
Very good. But there's 3 records coming out. What is going on over there, pal?
On November 20th, we'll be releasing the album for my band Nata.
Oh yes.
This is more of a hard rock band.
Mm-hmm.
This is an album we started working prior to the pandemic. Obviously, pandemic kind of locked down and all that kind of made things move in different times and ways. So that album is going to see the light of day this November 20th. And we're right now in, I guess, 3/4 of the new Parasite album being done. Wow. And I think that'll probably be ready sometime in February.
You will be a busy man.
I am a busy man. and Frankie is helping. No complaints, but I had to learn some songs in like 30 minutes. But it's fun. It's fun because you know what's interesting, right? And I thanks for asking about the albums. Yeah. But the interesting thing about and what I welcome your invitations, even with the brevity of it. But what I like about the invitation is it makes me learn those songs I love that I've never actually sat down and said, I'm going to see what Les is doing here. and I think that's happened to all the songs I've been invited to talk about. No exceptions.
Wow.
And I've had to learn them for this.
If there's a Titan track, Kello is number 1 choice.
There you go. And he learns it in half an hour.
Let's see what happens.
Express service from Kello. I mean, he's busy. He's working on 3 records. 30 minutes or it's free, everybody.
Kello, I am very, very curious. What is it like for you to put out a solo release without a band? There are going to be tons of people who will listen to your music regardless of the project. But is there any kind of fear at all or any insecurity in terms of putting out a solo album?
Well, when the album has your name on it, there's no security blanket. It's bare bones, I think. Plus, all expenses fall on me. I think that's the downside, but it's been a really fun exercise because I've been able to put together, particularly for this album, I assembled for each song like a dream team. So I have different musicians playing on different songs.
Yeah.
And they've been either heroes of mine that I've always wanted to play with them, that I've never found like the right stage or song or moment to do it. So it's been very satisfying, to say the least, just to be able to do this, I have songs that I put on this record that I put together in 2001, probably.
Oh, that goes way back.
Wow.
And actually, let me tell you something. When I put one of those songs, I was listening to that album.
Oh, really?
It had just come out.
Wow. So one of the tracks has roots in the Oysterhead record.
There is definitely some influence, because that record, I think the sound, it's what kind of pushed less forward, Because I'm going ahead on that conversation, but it's definitely a fun experience. I can relate, and obviously Les has been a huge influence on me as a bass player and musician, and now trying to come up with a solo album from a bass player that doesn't sound like a bass player's song. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was something that I definitely tried to make sure that didn't happen. I wanted to make sure that the songs made sense as a song, as a band, even though those have my name on it. It's something that I want someone to listen to and not necessarily be a bass player to enjoy them.
Yeah. Yeah. Songs for the people.
Songs for the ride. I think that's how everyone listens to songs now, right?
There you go. Yeah, that'll do it. And of course, Kello's at Kello Gonzalez on Instagram. You can find him on Facebook and YouTube under that name as well. Those are probably great places to start to find some sneak peeks at these records that are coming up. And so I'm excited for all of them, especially the one with your name on it, because I know where to place blame, as you've told us.
You like the record. It says 10 songs, at least 7 of them have bass solos. So.
Oh, yes.
That's good.
Speaking of bass solos, we have a track here today, Kello, and it's just so convenient that you're here for us to talk about it. And that is Mr. Oysterhead, the thematic track for the Grand Pecking Order by Oysterhead, the 2001 album that may or may not have influenced some of Kello's work that will show up on that solo record. Frankie, what is going on with this track?
I would like to begin by saying that Mr. Oysterhead is actually not only my favorite track on the album, it is one of my favorite things Les has ever done. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. We'll go into detail in a moment, but Mr. Oysterhead has been performed at every show Oysterhead has done. It has been teased. Of course, it has never been performed fully, but it has been teased by other projects during various performances. I mean, Les has teased the song with Primus, with Do the Twang, with the Fancy Band, with the Rat Brigade. But of course, full performances are only to be found within the context of the supergroup Oysterhead. It has never been performed per the studio version. So the structure is there, but they do jam some portions to incredible lengths. Just to give you an idea, from the samples that we're going to listen to today, I believe the performance in Denver lasts almost 20 minutes. And I think we also have another performance that goes on for almost 15 minutes. So it's one of the longer cuts at the show because it's the signature track. So of course they got to do something special with that. It was actually premiered in New Orleans when Oysterhead was performing the proto version of their songs. And we're also going to listen to that because, as you can imagine, the skeleton of the song is there, but at the same time, it's quite different from what we got on the record. So that is the live history of the track. It's worthwhile.
So there's no brevity on the live version.
Exactly.
Not at all. No. It's worth pointing out that the song was considered strong enough to actually be released as a promotional single. Now, if you get your hands on this CD single, you'll find two versions of the song. The album version, which runs for almost 5 minutes, and the radio edit, which is exclusive to the CD and runs for 3 minutes with 27 seconds. So it seems that the record label, well, Elektra, considered that the song had enough commercial appeal to actually get played on the radio.
I don't think I ever heard it on the radio, but I wasn't a radio listening dude, so I wonder if it picked up anything in that regard.
I never listened to the radio too, so
strange.
I would like to share with you guys a quote from Les. He said, "Stuart and I wrote Mr. Oysterhead, but we kind of forgot, and everyone got credit for that one. He and I were in his studio in LA, and I just started playing the lick, and it became Mr. Oysterhead. It's got a little bravado to it. That's a pretty ballsy statement. It's us saying, hey, you think you've seen it all? Well, check this out." So that's a great quote because it's the perfect prelude to what I want to discuss with you guys about Mr. Oysterhead. Lots of bands have a theme song, right? Or a signature song. And this is the theme song of Oysterhead. A moment ago, Kello and Josh were discussing the concept of music for the masses, right? Music that everyone can enjoy.
Sure.
Les himself said, well, there's this conversation that they had where they said, I want to make music for the average Joe, right? I want to make music for that guy walking on the street. And, well, we're familiar with that wonderful anecdote. But at the same time, it's really interesting how Mr. Oysterhead is, it's really, like you said, it would never get played on the radio. And it's really not the kind of song for the average Joe. I actually want to share this perspective with Kello in particular because he's an accomplished musician. My perception from Mr. Oysterhead is that it's a song for musicians. It's a song made for musicians to enjoy because you get 2 guitar solos, you get a bass solo. The production is fantastic. It's an audiophile recording. And in terms of the message of the song, basically the statement is that we are 3 guys who are extremely talented at the instruments that we play, and this is our band. Like Les said, if you think you've heard it all, well, get a load of this, right? It's complex, it's intricate, it's crazy. But Les is too humble to actually go on stage and say, hey, I am an incredible musician. No, he would never do something like that. So once again, he uses a resource, in this case, a character. So he's talking about Mr. Oysterhead, but we know that Mr. Oysterhead is essentially the entity of 3 musicians who are incredibly skilled and accomplished at their instruments. And they're basically putting aside all kind of false modesty. And they are saying, pretty much everything right now in the music scene is extremely dull and boring. So we are here to save the day with something original and something unique. What do you guys think?
I think that's the message. Now, the last time I saw Parasite play live, it was great because they took the stage and Kello said, we are the absolute greatest band in the world. And then they played a whole bunch of songs and proved themselves right. Kello, I guess you have a similar, I'm joking, of course, but I do wonder what your thoughts on that are, because you have to have a certain amount of confidence to get up and perform, especially music that's not easy to perform, such as the music of Parasite. And so, but you don't have to brag about it.
It's a very honest album. You can hear the 3 personalities being put together. They're not trying to be something they're not. Stuart sounds like Stuart. You hear Les, Trey. Their personalities come together. And these are 3 strong personalities. And I think that's why the album sounds that way, because you have 3 front men in a band.
Yeah.
Right? That's basically Oysterhead at their peak of their instruments playing together. And now the interesting thing about Oysterhead is that the 3 of them actually play for the songs.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they can solo throughout the whole album, they actually, I mean, and this song in particular, I mean, it has solos. Other than the solos, they're playing together, they're jamming together. It's a simple groove, and when they had their time, they go at it. But other than that, they're having fun playing together, and you hear the personalities come out. You see that's there, right? And even though, I mean, you mentioned this being a musician's album, I don't know. It's a really thought out album, but it's something you can easily listen to without thinking about the musicality of it.
Yeah.
At least I remember when I got it, I was actually in Raleigh. I had just graduated and I was there in my first job. And I remember being abroad, listening to the album. I'm like, this is an interest. My first thought was, this is not a Primus album.
Yeah.
This is definitely not your average Les album as well. It was something different. I mean, I could hear Les.
Yeah.
But it was a more, I don't know if this is when Les matured. I don't know if this was the point where he said, I'm going to do this. I mean, I guess this was the first, I mean, the first album he got out.
Studio record at any rate, yeah. And
right. So this was the first, I guess, band album he was coming out with. I don't know if part of the reason he got together with Stew and Trey was to do something completely different. Even if you listen to his solo albums, particularly the ones that came around the first Primus phase,
mm-hmm.
I mean, you can, even Sausage, I mean, you can hear, the influences. I mean, it's the same voice with some different musicians, but still, the root of the sound's there. And it wasn't until this album that he kind of started exploring different sounds, he started simplifying a lot of stuff.
And he learned to step back, right?
Correct. He started stepping back, but as well, he started being more comfortable singing as well. And I don't know if even Trey gave him tips on singing,
Stuart had a lot to do with that. Stuart told him to stop pretending he was not a singer.
Correct.
He said,
you can hear that.
He said, you can sing, so don't be embarrassed to try it.
Because even then, if you hear Les singing voice or even harmonies prior to Oysterhead, they were more comic-esque. They were like more narrating the story.
Right.
Playing a character.
But then after this, I think he as you mentioned, he kind of got in terms to his him actually being a singer. With his particular voice, which makes him a particular character, but he can sing, right? And I think he was from here on. There's a pre Oysterhead Les and a post Oysterhead Les, right? So it's and I think you can see his playing the jamming live with Primus we're talking about 20-minute Oysterhead track. So I think he started exploring different aspects of being a musician and not being afraid to expand. Right. I think that's what this album gave us, and the songs for me particularly. This one, as with Frankie, this one caught me at first listen. The other songs, probably there's another one that could have had the same impact, but the other ones I had to really go through them a little bit more. Actually, it was probably like a month ago that the album came out on my playlist, and I enjoyed it differently after giving it a break. Being my mature ears now, I appreciated a lot more the what they were trying to get across, right? But this track in particular, this one from start to finish is a masterpiece.
You made some really, really great points. First of all, let's talk about the brevity. So live Oysterhead, it's a completely different beast, right? They can take the songs to really strange and interesting places. But the studio release, if you graph the album, you look at the back sleeve, you read the song titles, and then you check the duration, nothing stands out in terms of, wow, this is like a 10-minute song. There's none of that on the record. The songs are actually brief, and what they deliver musically, it does have quite a compact quality. I mean, even on this song, we mentioned that there are 3 solos. Trey gets 2 guitar solos, Les has 1 bass solo, and that sounds overkill. But the reason that the track works so much is because each solo comes and goes. And they are actually so compelling because of that reason. They are compact. They make a statement. They do not overstay their welcome. They serve the song. And that makes them so memorable that just like the lyrics, you can also remember those solos note by note.
And I can also add that I think if you count the intro, Les does have 2 solos.
Wow, that's a lot of solos. Almost as many as on the Kello Gonzalez record coming down the pike there. So, yeah, this is an interesting tune in that regard. And what I'm really appreciating as we get to go through these tracks is we get to hear the primordial versions of them from the New Orleans 2000 performance. And Frankie's got some time codes for us to listen to so we can hear those bones, I suppose, or that skeleton that ended up being fleshed out. Do you want to do that right now, Frankie?
Yeah, let's take a listen at the proto Oysterhead.
Here's the intro.
The chorus.
It's in there, huh?
That's the chorus.
So just in that little intro, we can hear that they already have this because we know they jammed some leading up to this date that's already kind of taken shape there. And then after a little... Now, this is not a 20-minute version, but it's 7 minutes and 40 seconds, so we're going to jump around. A little over a minute in, we get some lyrics.
There's a new sensation hitting town. It's moving slow, low to the ground. It'll pick you up when you're feeling down. He's an inspiration, he's an inspiration, he's an inspiration to us all. He's an inspiration, he's an inspiration, he's an inspiration to us all. When all else has been done and said, along comes Mr. Oysterhead. When all else has been done and said, you best look out for Mr. Oysterhead.
It's funny to hear that. Those lyrics are essentially there.
There's no way they came up with that 10 minutes prior to the show. I'm inclined to believe those lyrics for this song in particular have to be done with some degree of anticipation because they are essentially what we get on the studio version.
I think those were constructed well before 10 minutes ahead of the show, yes. I think you're right. But they're largely there. So we're seeing that many of the main pieces are in place already.
This song didn't change that much for the record.
It certainly was developed more, but I don't hear major changes yet. No. Here's the 4-minute mark for a crescendo.
Said, you best look out for Mr. Oysterhead.
Well, that's the outro.
That's what it sounds like, and there's still time left on this track, on this performance too, which is interesting.
It still goes on after that. Yeah.
So they decided to make that the ending.
On the studio album, yeah, it's the ending.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And then, so once again, the pieces are there, and then they give us the bass solo. I think Frankie's going to make us listen to a lot of bass solos tonight.
Yeah.
But you know what? When you have someone that, like Trey, that comes from the jam scene, it's easy to think how a band with such talented musicians can be put together in the studio and come up with this, right? Mm-hmm. Even in several of my bands, we've recorded jams and then taken pieces from that and constructed a song. So I can see how from these jams that they did prior to them actually going into the studio, they could say, I like this, let's use this for this part, and then this will be the chorus, and then I'll start doing a solo, and then you'll do another one, and, you know.
Yeah. And it takes shape after, because I believe it was Stewart who was cutting up these tapes from the New Orleans performance and sending them along to Trey and Les and saying, this sounds good, here's this.
Makes sense.
We should use this, and they did a little mixing and matching here and there, especially with this track, and we're hearing a lot of those foundational pieces. And speaking of foundational pieces, here's a bass solo.
Let me try and play that.
Less up to his old tricks there. For a moment there, before he went into his solo proper, it sounded like they were all playing over each other, as if nobody knew who was going next. That was kind of messy, and Stewart has called this performance more than once a train wreck. So we got a little bit of a sample of that there. So the bones are there, the pieces are there. They go into the studio and they gussy it up a bit and make it a more complete piece. And that's
masterpiece.
I'm sorry, masterpiece, Frankie. I apologize. You know, that's where I want to turn it to you. What are your thoughts on this track in general? And if you don't mind getting that big, beautiful bass out and running us through some parts of it.
I'll start with this, right? It wasn't until probably Anti-Pop that Les started playing with more sounds, more effects. Because before that, I mean, he mostly only used an overdrive and then some fuzz. It was probably a phaser, I think he used, right? And those were the effects he used. And then when we get to the Anti-Pop album, he started playing with delays. He started playing with synths and envelope and a little bit more sounds. But it wasn't until this album that he actually went overboard with the sounds, right? I'll show you something because this is the actual pedal he uses. We were talking about this, Josh.
Yeah.
This is the actual, this chord pedal. It's the AX300B, right? So this is the one he uses. There's two sounds that he uses, and I'll use them because he uses those in this song, which is the intro sound with the synth, right? And then the other one, which is the interesting thing, is the preset sound, and this is the one that he uses some of it in Anti-Pop, but from Oysterhead on, almost everywhere. It's called Funky Diva. That's the preset name. Funky Diva. Here it is.
Yeah.
So that's the sound. And
yeah.
And what I figured out is I don't think he even messes with the presets, you know. He's using them as this. Right? So that's the the intro, and he plays around obviously with the it's like a minor E scale. He keeps it simple, right? So that's the intro, right? And then we go into the main riff.
Yeah.
And when he's singing, he basically just kind of palm mutes.
It looks like one of his standard box shape licks.
Correct. And then on the, I guess, I don't know if it's pre-chorus, chorus.
Yeah.
That's I guess in terms of structure, it's pretty simple because most of the time he's doing this.
Yeah.
So it's a very less type riff.
And that's the provenance of it, I believe, is that they, as Frankie described, he just started goofing on that, and Stu joined him, and you have your song, or at least the foundation for your song, and then they take it up on stage.
And I can also see how he'll be influenced by the sound of the envelope on the preset he uses, right? So
Yeah.
because it's not as fun just doing something on this. I mean, you need something like this.
Yeah.
So I can see him being hooked on the sound.
Yeah.
Right.
There's
I
a little
have
value
newfound
added. Yeah.
appreciation for the riff, listening to Kello play it so well.
And the thing is, most of these type of sounds, particularly this envelope, the reason why he still uses the chord effects along with the rest of the rig that he has is no other multi-effect pedal processor gets this sound. It's got, I mean, if I look at the preset, it's got an octave, distortion, auto-wah, and I think it has phaser as well. And I've tried to come up with something like that on my Helix, but nope. And even then, Les still using this only for those two sounds. Only for those two sounds.
Wow. Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, right? And this sound, the magic of it is the dynamic it gives it. I mean, if you play it like white, it gives you different response. So Les having a very percussive playing,
Yeah.
I can see him playing around with that and leveraging the dynamics, right?
And he certainly does that. And you just modeled that. He certainly does that in his second bass solo, we'll call it that, later on. And really... Not bad for 30 minutes of work.
Yeah, that is absolutely incredible, Kello. I wanted to ask you something, Kello. The muted thing that he does in this bass solo. Now that you, I mean, I don't know why I hadn't noticed before, but now that I saw you playing it, it reminds me immediately of how he does the same thing on Lacquerhead from Antipop, right?
The same triplet technique, Tommy the Cat, Lacquerhead.
Yeah.
Some other ones. I mean, it's the it's the same in different contexts, obviously, but it's the same. It's like with a drummer using paradiddles, right? I mean, it's the pattern, and you apply it differently, right? So in this case, even having the envelope and the different resources he uses, it gives it a different context.
Does this bass solo, KO, sound to you like something that Les improvised on the spot in the studio, or does it sound like something that was actually fully thought out in order to fit the track?
I think, I don't know how they put it together, but just given the atmosphere of the band, of the album, I think it was improvised.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I don't think he ever played it that way, you know?
No.
Right.
So it makes complete sense that this was I don't know if it's a first take, and it might as well be. Or he did several of them and he said, I like this one, let's keep this one, right? So, but it does sound like a one take of something. It sounds very less. When I was listening to the solo you put, so that's a very less thing to do.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Josh, can you please sample the bass solo from the studio version, and maybe you can break it down a little more for us?
All those parts you described are in there, pal.
And he's basically on playing on with the E. Then he goes up into the which is this small box here is a very less Claypool solo type thing, right? Then he goes down again into the slap. Then he does the Tommy the Cat stuff.
Yeah.
And then the triplets at the end. And that's the solo.
There you go. Those are all Les Claypool hallmarks, and he jams them all into one.
Correct. So I think he basically said, this is what I do, right? And this is what I do.
Yeah.
My trademark sounds, right? And he puts them there. And he basically puts the Claypool stamp on the song. Yeah. I mean, even though it started with them, and what more Claypool than
Kello, why does the bass sound so crunchy on the solo?
You've got some distortion here, right? So if I were to play this, let me see if I right. So without the distortion, I mean. It sounds thin. It sounds. It lacks, I guess, the crunchness, right? And again, between the dynamics of the envelope, the crunch of the overdrive, and then again, it has a very slight phaser. I mean, very, very slight. And the octave, it has you can hear the octave, a low octave there, right? Funky diva.
the funky diva. As far as what you've modeled for us, Ko, what I do appreciate it is Les Claypool jamming all of his favorite things into one solo, but given the message of the tune, I think it's appropriate for him to do that because he's introducing himself to a wider audience, and especially Fish fans who didn't, many of whom probably didn't know who he was. And, the 6 or 7 Police fans that showed up for this record too. So he is introducing him to these new people, and he's saying, "This is me. This is Oysterhead," and off we go. So I that's what I appreciate about it, and I think that's maybe the connection. And I don't know if they were thinking to that depth, but that's where my mind is with it.
They were having fun. I mean, if you listen to the songs, they're having fun.
Yeah,
they're having fun together.
Yeah. How cool is it that you would get, even though it's a little box riff and it's just something you're playing, but how cool would it be to groove on that with Stuart Copeland just laying down a ballsy groove with you? How would that feel, do you think?
Even this, just...
Yeah.
If I were just doing that, I mean, that would be enough.
Yeah.
But if you're, I mean, I can relate. If you're playing with a monster drummer as Stuart by itself, will be very inspiring, just watching him play, trying to follow along. Must have been a fun experience. I mean, and I know he's a very big Police fan. So, I mean, playing with his idol must have been an experience, right? So, jamming with him, composing songs with him, decomposing songs with him.
It's kind of cool just to go play that little groove and go, yeah, I'm playing with Stuart Copeland.
Which I can relate even more on my album. I didn't jam with them, unfortunately, but I did invite several of my adolescence drum heroes, right, from Mexico. Yeah. So I got to play with a lot of them. So I can relate to what that must have been.
That, I think, comes through in some of the live footage we're hearing, but I think it does also on this studio recording. As far as Oysterhead goes, I think it does come through that they're having fun and really enjoying playing with each other.
Which is, I think a follow-up is overdue,
And that's something I've been struggling with lately. What I've been thinking about with this record is it's this one point in time that, other than a few live performances, they really haven't come back to it. And so it's a monolithic thing that is not as dynamic as I thought it was 20 years ago.
It makes complete sense because that was my impression when I heard it the first time. And I was like, I think the album was made, or I guess the songs were made to be played live. Mm-hmm. Thinking about the dynamics of the jams they would go about. And I think if I relate this to other projects that he's done, I think a second album would be a masterpiece. I mean, because you mature the relationship with the other musicians.
Right.
They get a hang of the composing methods and their roles and how they work together. And I think, I mean, if we were to get an Oysterhead 2, I think they would have gelled even more.
Yeah, a firmer grasp on the identity of Oysterhead.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the pandemic had something to do with that. I mean, there's no concrete proof, but I'm certain that they couldn't have just been rehearsing. I'm sure they were trying out ideas or at least doing something, because back in 2020, when they were getting together for the shows, somebody uploaded a photo of the studio and Oysterhead was there. And I remember that I left a comment in the post and I asked, is Oysterhead recording something or are they just rehearsing? And the producer of the studio, I believe it's Skull Cranium, he replied to me with a winky face. So I've got the theory that something was cooking prior to the pandemic.
Interesting.
Let's keep our fingers crossed, and it could be that one of the things Les has been hinting about that's coming up will be one of the follow-up for this.
Yeah, They can get it out of the freezer. Why not?
I mean, they've been playing. It's not like they're not talking. It's not like they haven't played together lately, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So, and they've said Primus is not going to be doing something in their near future, right? So
you're giving me hope, Kello. You're filling me with hope.
I'm hopeful.
Look into the future. Anything can happen. There's a couple other things I wanted to point out about this track that I like, and this is becoming a pattern. I like that we have two vocalists. Les's vocal delivery is straight ahead, Les Claypool. On the chorus, when all else has been done and said, Trey's doing kind of a chromatic dissension. When all else has been done and said, along comes Mr. Oysterhead. I like that he's doing that. I'm not in key, but I know. But
can you sample the layering on the vocals, Josh?
I don't have a time code for it. Did you give me one?
Yes, I provided the time code for the layers.
You did. Whee! And that's something that has really struck me upon re-listen. So let's hear some layers.
Has been done and said, along comes Mr. Oysterhead, and through the long, frustrating years of wretched
and then less on less, yeah.
comes a man to squelch our fears. He's slippery between the ears.
Now, I know Frankie really loves that nasal one that he's doing, that higher-pitched one, the old guy.
And he was doing that since Miscellaneous Debris.
Yeah.
Layering
ears.
different vocal tracks.
Yeah, doing a lot of that. Now, that iteration of the chorus, Trey's just kind of yelling, but I believe it's near the end of the tune on the chorus when he's doing that descending line. I also like the vocal stuff during one of Trey's guitar solos where you hear some voices going, boom, 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 Mr. Oysterhead, which is pretty fun. That just show they're having a good time in the studio because I assume they have some time to kill. And I like the self-indulgence. 2 bass solos, 2 guitar solos. Why not? Every number doesn't have to be a power pop tune like Oz Is Ever Floating. You can let it ride. That was the whole spirit of the band when they started, I suppose.
Even with the solos, the structure's not that complex, you know?
No, it's simple. And that's, I think, goes back to the spirit of the show.
Yeah.
That's a curious thing. So this song is basically a statement. And it's a pretty confident statement. No, it's like, we are making amazing music.
Mm-hmm.
But if you listen to the prototype version from New Orleans, the song starts with the main riff.
Mm-hmm.
And for the studio version, they decided to begin with something more ethereal, something a little less in your face, so to speak. So it's interesting how the lyric is so compelling, but they decided to tone down a bit the abrasive quality of the music and make it, kind of a little more laid back.
Yeah, I think much of the record is a little bit more, not muted, but the edge has been drawn back a bit for the studio recording. On the subsequent tours after the record, gee whiz, they're flying high and playing everything double time. So they knew they had space for that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think I guess that's Stewart.
Yeah.
Stewart.
Oh, Stewart's setting that tempo.
Yeah, he's
doubt.
The one keeping the time. So I mean,
yeah.
You can blame him.
Well, I gotta imagine after years and years and years of not performing live music, and especially not performing live music on drums, he's got some pent up energy, and he is just spending it on stage, just bam, bam, bam. Speaking of those lyrics, come on, kiddies, gather around. There's a new sensation hitting town.
Where have you heard that before?
I know I've heard it somewhere before. Come on, kiddies, gather round. Who's your foremost friend in town? So on and so forth, Professor Nutbutter.
Oh.
That opening, come on, kiddies, gather round is recycled. The other thing, and this is a bit more esoteric, but
if
rhythm...
someone can recycle his own stuff, it's
yes,
right?
Exactly.
There are plenty of lyricists who go back to one of their little darlings and like, come on, kiddies, gather round, and they'll use it more than once, and it doesn't really bother me. But it just caught my ear, and I thought, I've heard this phrase before from Les.
There's a second one, Josh, but it's less obvious.
Uh-huh.
It's moving slow, low to the ground. There's a quote from Les saying that when he composed the Tommy the Cat riff,
right,
he said that it sounded like something crawling on the floor.
That's right. To me, it's tangential, but I'll accept it. Because it is Pretty close, right? Moving slow, low to the ground. Very much like that old 0.5x Tommy the Cat riff. There's another association I made. And so the rhythm and the vocal pattern of "Come on, kiddies, gather round, there's a new sensation hitting town." The delivery reminded me of the first two lines of Frizzle Fry. "Hello, all you boys and girls, similar greeting. I'd like to take you to the inside world." I think on Frizzle Fry, it's those two lines are 7 and 10 syllables, and here it's 7 and 9 syllables. I started singing "Come on, kiddies, gather around, there's a new sensation hitting town" to how he presents the vocals on Frizzle Fry, and it kind of fits. It's bizarre. But you're right, there is this song. First of all, that drum beat that Stewart lays down, this song struts. This is strutting music. When you're really confident, when you're tracking your solo record, and then you're also 3/4 of the way through your Parasite record, and then over here you got your Nada record that you're almost finished with, and you're going, can't wait for release day. That really pairs well with these lyrics about me, well, not me, but Mr. Oysterhead being the inspiration to us all because he's going to change or be the salvation of music as we know it, I suppose. This is, I think, something that Les has lyrically addressed before, and since, I suppose. This, I remember back in the day when music folk had a lot to say. This reminds me of Antipop, too, I sit, hope, and pray that someone will come along and show the way, because it's like it reminds me thematically, at least, of the Antipop lyrics. By the way, isn't it strange to think that Antipop and Oysterhead are only 2 years apart chronologically? Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah. And also, Josh, the chorus is quite prophetic, because when Les is singing in third person, he's an inspiration to us all. He's using Mr. Oysterhead as a literary resource, but in reality, what he's pretty much saying is that they are the inspiration for the musicians. And it was quite true, because that was a particular time in terms of the music scene where a lot of very popular bands actually owned quite a bit to Primus. From the top of my head, you have Papa Roach, Limp Bizkit, Deftones. All of these bands, Alien and Farm,
Korn,
all
for
of
sure.
them were huge Primus fans.
Yep, absolutely. They all borrowed heavily from that band. That's a good point. He recognizes that he is influential to a degree. There's kind of the signature flip of phrase that Les does too. When all else has been done and said. When all is said and done is the common cultural idiom. He flips the two terms, so it's done and said. And boom, it rhymes with Oysterhead. And when the moment that lyric hit, I'm sure he and Trey just looked at each other and went, "Yeah, that's the one!" And then they kept writing more rhymes and went, "Yeah, this is going to be the one. So we're going to play this groove and we're going to put these things, going up to that show in 2000. That must have been fun. to just go, "Oh, yes, done and said. Oysterhead. Got it. We got our track." That's it. That's the song.
But I don't think Les has an issue rhyming stuff, right? I mean,
no, it comes naturally, right?
And I could even think of them just talking and duck him out.
Yeah,
I don't even think they gave it much thought. I mean, they were just talking, smoking, talking.
Definitely smoking. Les did say it was a debaucherous time with making that record and going on tour. So you can bet that there was some stuff going on. No, but I do like that it kind of swaggers along, and then that turn of phrase done and said. So there's a lot of little things
super
in here
catchy
that I can appreciate.
We need a follow-up album, I think.
That's your takeaway? Nice. I like it.
That's my takeaway, That's my takeaway. I enjoy the album for what it is, making less branch out a little bit. Also, I think that was, as you mentioned, that was the first time that he didn't have the full weight of being the vocalist.
Yeah.
So he could be a bass player, just be a bass player. He explored sounds. He simplified, started jamming, started using weirder sounds, and I think then he took all of these learnings and kind of applied it to the rest of the stuff he's doing. He started jamming with Primus, started jamming with his solo stuff. So I think it must have been a very chaotic time in regards to him not having Primus anymore, but then learning so much that he said, I need to do all of this now.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to apply all of this now, and then coming back to Primus and say, now we're going to jam. Right? I imagine how that conversation must have been.
Yeah.
Right. But I think he consolidated his persona, his musical voice. And because back then it was pretty much founded on Primus. And after this and his solo stuff coming back to Primus, I mean, you could tell that he was, he knew what his voice was and how he wanted to sound and what he wanted to do.
And then as far as identity, then he wasn't the Primus guy. He was Les Claypool.
Correct. But he was confident enough to be able to go back to Primus.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
And reinvent the band.
And continue expanding either Primus, his solo stuff, and the different things, and not being afraid to bring elements of the different things to one place or the other.
Yeah.
Right.
One of my takeaways of Mr. Oysterhead is that it's particularly compelling and it works so well because it's all true. We know that sometimes musicians develop, this kind of attitude, but they do not have the skill or the work to back it up. Les, of course, he has the right to say, when all else has been done and said, along comes my band. He has the right to say that because he's got the skill, the talent, and the track record to back it up. So it's also interesting, how he felt compelled to express this in a song, but he found a way to not make it arrogant because he's using a character. But of course, we know what he's talking about. So it makes the song something extremely unique in his catalog in the sense that, Les is a very, very modest person. He would never refer to himself as a legend or a genius or anything like that. Mm-hmm. That is up to us, right, to say about him. But with this particular track, he had a moment where he put aside the modesty and he felt confident enough to say, us three guys are making incredible music, So it's here to blow you away, and it's unlike anything else that you have heard before. Mm-hmm. So I think that is one of the reasons that the track works so well, because the music matches what the lyrics are saying. The music is absolutely incredible on a technical level and on a creative level. That's the other thing. Like Kello mentioned, it's not noodling. It's not endless jamming. It's actually written very well in the sense that it leaves you wanting more. Some of these songs, I wish they just went on for a few more minutes. And that's why I keep coming back to the record. That's why I love listening to this song. For me, the payoff is the second bass solo. And I know that I have to wait to get to that moment. And that's why it's always so enjoyable. So that's my takeaway. Mr. Oysterhead is a song about confidence that has all the right in the world to be confident.
Let's follow that up with some Primates takes. And if you want to be a part of the Primates takes, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/Primus Tracks. Check out all the options there. And one of the main perks is that we'll read your takes about the track that we're discussing right here on the podcast. David Crane says, when all else has been done and said, this is a fine track by Oysterhead. Hey, he kept the rhyme scheme there. And he says the jam from this epic trio at the 2-minute and 40-second mark elevates the song to a whole nother level. Akin to what we've been talking about lyrically with its presentation and message, Jordan Kahn said this Les track is akin to Here Come the Bastards. He's announcing that his band does not compromise. I saw it 3 times in 2001, and the best was a standalone encore in Hollywood. Our pal Eric in Australia says, after the lighter intro songs, they really ramp it up with Mr. Oysterhead. Les is Postmaster General, ripping that envelope. It's pretty good. Brooks Delight says he loves this track, and he loves those solos, and he loves that we get a we get a huge slab of Claypool doing what he does best. Hashtag Team Envelope Filter.
Envelope Filter Delight.
Funky Diva.
We got a whole bunch of new hashtags now. Wow. Hashtag Funky Diva, Team Envelope Filter Delight, Done and Said, hashtag Brevity. We're doing great here tonight. Lastly, John Shreve says, it always felt weird hearing Les sing like this. It's a huge departure from his normal stuff. To which Jordan Kahn replied, Les has normal stuff? Thank you, Primates, for your takes. Frankie, we got a couple live cuts.
First, we have Denver, First Back Center, the reunion show. This is the second night. This is February 15th.
Trey! Stew Daddy! Look at all the fucking people! It's been a long-ass time. It's been 7 years since I've stood in front of a bunch of people. And the thing is, the last time I stood in front of a bunch of people, I was with this guy and this guy. So, I don't want to open a big old can of worms. We all had some crazy times this last year and a half, 2 years. And I very much appreciate the fact that I can stand here with these two magnificent men in front of you people once again, because you don't really appreciate things like this as much as you'd like to until it's gone for a while. So, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having us back, and
Love that call down. Choice part, Frankie. I love that commentary from Les, and just the overselling it, and then just saying hello. He almost said it like Squiggy. Hello. By the way, that is an 18.5-minute version of Mr. Oysterhead. Speaking of brevity, goodness. Well, let's go to Peach Fest. This is Peach Fest 2021. Only 14.5-minute version of Mr. Oysterhead. So they must have still been getting their legs under them. Couldn't stretch it to the full 18 this time. Well, we're going to hear the Mr. Oysterhead vibe in 2021 and see what the heck they've been doing with it lately.
This is 2021?
Yes.
It's on the same key. They haven't detuned yet.
Les isn't going down to E flat yet.
Or D or
No, that's a good catch because, of course, as you get older, generally your voice register drops and it's hard to hit those higher notes. And of course, most notably, Metallica went to E flat for their studio records in the mid '90s. I think they've been playing detuned live ever since, as I recall.
Since Rick Rubin, they recorded on E standard. I mean, they detuned live, but the records are on E again.
Because I remember Death Magnetic was in E, and I was surprised because I thought that they were going to stick with detunings for studio recordings for the rest of their days.
Going back to premise, it's interesting to see that Les is not going lower.
He's still able to get up here when he needs to. So that's good that he's still got that going on. Bass solo time, Peach Fest 2021.
Oh, yes.
Building up to the break. I just love that he just yells at Trey.
Only Les would do something completely different to the studio solo, right?
You have to. It's Oysterhead. Trey! Give me a Pepsi! Well, okay, so Frankie, you made us listen to a bunch of bass solos. We got to hear some vibes from 2021, 2020. We also got to hear the studio recording, and then going all the way back to 2000 as we have been. It's still remarkable to me that they've played only 20-odd live shows in 20-odd years.
It just makes it more special, I think.
I think you're right. As you stated before, KO, it does make me want another record because I want them to go out and play fresh tunes. But at the same time, if you only play once every 7 years, the tunes stay fresh.
Let's rephrase that.
Yeah.
If you jam 20 different minutes every time you play, it's a complete different song.
And therefore, it stays fresh. And you don't need a second record. Because that 18-minute Mr. Oysterhead in 2021 is different than the one we did 20 years ago.
Exactly.
Now it's going to be Elder Oysterhead.
Elder Oysterhead. Well, I should say this. Mr. Oysterhead, we've been inspired, and you've been tracked. Frankie, next time, we're going to look at what we do in the shadows.
Is your true name May Pan, Josh, by any chance?
Now we're committing identity theft. Thanks, Frankie.
Yeah.
KO, thank you so much for joining us to talk Oysterhead and model the bass parts. It's always a pleasure to have you.
You're an inspiration, KO.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for making me learn this. I hope I was able to at least do it a little bit of justice.
Absolutely. And I know we didn't live up to promises of brevity. However, I do appreciate you being here, and I could talk to you all night. Once again, KO's at Kello Gonzalez on all the places you would look for him. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Go find him. Go find the new Kello Gonzalez record. Go look for Nata. Parasite coming down the pike. Pretty excited for you, pal.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks again, KO. Primates, we'll talk to you soon. Later days.
Willie Mays.